moment a person is born, they begin to develop and learn at a rapid rate. Compared to other species, human infants are born relatively immature, and a lot of development happens after birth as the brain increases in surface area and makes new connections as children learn. Children mature physically and cognitively through their early life, and their path of maturation can be influenced by cultural and social learning. For example, almost all babies will develop language, but the question is, which language? And almost all babies find some foods disgusting, but what they end up liking depends on their culture. In this story, we will follow a boy and a girl through their emotional life to observe the way emotional intelligence develops and how it can be influenced by culture, society, temperament, family, and the self in order to answer the question, do emotions control you, or do you control your emotions? An infant's temperament is their biologically based individual tendency to positive and negative experience and expression. Temperament is influenced by genetics, maturation, and experience, and it serves as the framework for emotion-based personality. According to the emotion-specific approach, we come into the world with dispositions to feel specific emotions, which shape how we see the world, how we react to other people, how we behave in general, and how we form relationships. Temperament can be measured according to the Rothbard model, which accounts for the different dimensions of temperament, including extroversion/surgency, negative reactivity, and executive control. In our story, as an infant, David gets frustrated and angry easily, shows low activity levels and low soothability levels. David demonstrates normative development of anger as a more specific reaction to frustration of their goals. For example, not getting the toy they want. In infants, anger is expressed by furrowed eyebrows and consists of behavior like throwing or pounding. According to the Rothbard model, David would score low on extroversion/surgency, or positive reactivity, and high on negative reactivity. On the other hand, as an infant, Tessa is often seen smiling or laughing, is not necessarily shy, and is very curious about the world around her. Tessa demonstrates social smiling often, which first appears around 6 weeks and continues to develop over the first few months. Social smiling is a response to familiar faces or smiling faces and demonstrates the elicitation interpersonal function of emotion. According to the Rothbard model, Tessa would score high on extroversion/surgency, or positive reactivity, and low on negative reactivity. Attachment is a long-lasting emotional bond to a regular caregiver or partner that involves behaviors and emotions that regulate the interactions between the pair. Attachment develops between the age of 6 to 9 months when children begin exploring their environment. Attachment style depends on the reciprocal relationship between the caregiver's parenting style as well as the infant's temperament, as one influences how the parent responds to the child, and one influences how the child responds to the parent, eventually creating a feedback loop that continues to encourage the foundational aspects of personality and attachment unique to the child. Attachment shapes how children learn to express their needs and emotions. It provides a template for relationships in general, and it guides development of emotion regulation strategies. According to psychologist John Bowlby, there are 4 main attachment styles, which include secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and disorganized attachment. David's negative reactivity and low activity level, combined with his caregiver's uninvolved parenting style and minimal attempts at soothing him and taking care of his needs, caused him to develop an avoidant attachment style in infancy. Avoidant attachment style in infancy is characterized by the development of emotionally deactivating strategies such as minimizing one's own need for social closeness and hiding expressions of emotion. Conversely, Tessa's extroversion, positive reactivity, and curiosity, combined with her caregiver's authoritative parenting style, which encourages closeness and exploration, caused her to develop a secure attachment style in infancy. Secure attachment style in infancy is characterized by the development of a balance of interdependence and independence, seeking out help when needed, but not overly much. Adolescence consists of the teenage years, 13 through 18, and emerging adulthood, 18 through 25. It is mainly marked by the onset of puberty and the taking on of adult responsibilities when emotions may be more intense for a number of reasons. These reasons include the underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, which is an important brain region for impulse inhibition, emotion regulation, and anticipation of emotional consequences. The prefrontal cortex is still developing until about age 25, and it develops more slowly than circuits involved in reward and emotional reactivity. For this reason, adolescents experience intense emotions in a functioning behavior activation or reward system, but take longer and are more effortful in decision making, and tend to focus much more on reward than on risks and threats in risky situations, which often causes them to make more impulsive and risky choices during this period of development. Another major contributor to the emotional changes in adolescence are the hormonal changes that occur with the onset of puberty. During puberty, girls experience elevated hormone levels of estrogen and progesterone, while boys experience elevated testosterone levels, and these dictate the physical and emotional changes that occur during this time period. Also, adolescence consists of many social changes such as more independence from parents, increased importance of peer status, and increased pressure from schoolwork. These social changes introduce new opportunities for emotional experiences, new stressors, and new feelings that the child must navigate according to their emotional tendencies, personality, and attachment styles. The combination of these changes, as well as an elevated maturity level, encourage temperament to interact with personality and facilitate the development of a child into a unique individual. This time period is crucial for the way that emotion tendencies manifest into personality. Love is a complex feeling that is experienced in different variations throughout life and can be considered an emotion, attitude, prototype, or script, depending on the context. Different types of love include passionate love, companionate love, and nurturant love. Nurturant love is the type of love that makes you feel like you want to take care of something, usually between a mother and child, and is inspired by cuteness, youth, vulnerability, and helplessness of another. Companionate love is characterized by strong attachment, mutual respect and enjoyment, and affection towards one another, usually experienced between close friends or longtime lovers. Passionate love is characterized by frequent thoughts of one another, intense desire to be together, and excitement from attention of the other, and usually occurs in instances of infatuation or romantic love toward another. The more complex versions of love develop later in life, and an individual's perception of love is impacted by their attachment styles in relationships. Going back to our story, David and Tessa have now grown into young men and women in their teenage years and both become acquainted with love along with other intense emotions of this developmental period. David's avoidant attachment style has remained with him throughout maturation and causes him to often avoid closeness and reliance on others. He is more intolerant of others' imperfections, and he minimizes expressions of needs and emotions often. This attachment style toward relationships has caused him to adopt a mental model of love that passionate love doesn't exist, romantic love doesn't last, and finding true love is very rare. Because of this impression, David spends a lot of time alone and has little trust and affection from others, which causes him to remain single through adolescence and early adulthood. This affects his social skills as well, which inhibits the formation of new friendships, let alone romantic relationships. Conversely, Tessa's secure attachment style in adolescence allows her to foster long-lasting relationships and to accept and support partners despite their faults. Due to her perceptions based on attachment style, Tessa developed a mental model of love that passionate love waxes and wanes and romantic love doesn't fade. This impression allows her to form strong, healthy, and long-lasting relationships with partners and friends that teach her more about her own feelings and the value of relationships. Stress is another experience that arises during adolescence, and its functionality depends on the way people regulate these feelings. Stress is not an emotion, but it is highly connected with emotional experiences. Stress can occur in any demanding situation, particularly ones for which you don't believe you have adequate resources with which to cope or is appraised as threatening. According to Hans Selye and his theory of stress as a general adaptation syndrome, stress consists of 3 phases: alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. The alarm phase is characterized by high arousal of the sympathetic nervous system and stimulates attention, memory, and immune system activity. Alarm can be adaptive as it is meant for quick short-term reactions like being hunted by a predator, and mainly accounts for the emotional aspect of stress. After alarm comes resistance, in which sympathetic activation decreases, the adrenal cortex secretes the stress hormone cortisol, and this stage can be experienced for hours to days as a prolonged state of moderate arousal. After resistance comes exhaustion, in which the stress response is maintained by adrenaline, cortisol, and other hormones, which increase metabolism by drawing energy from bodily reserves, causing weakness, fatigue, and lack of motivation. Exhaustion also overtaxes the immune system, which makes the body more vulnerable to illness and inflammation. This is the maladaptive side of stress. Short and long-term stress are mediated by different brain pathways, which can be demonstrated by observing David and Tessa again. Upon encountering a stressful event, the pressure of getting good grades in his most difficult class, David keeps his feelings to himself due to his perception that he should not look to others for help. By keeping his emotions to himself and not seeking help or proactive coping methods, David experiences long-term stress, characterized by the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This axis prolongs the exhaustion phase and produces high amounts of cortisol that make him feel weak, fatigued, and he loses motivation to study. David feels exhausted for weeks and tends to sleep a lot instead of studying, eventually resulting in poor grades in that class and an even more negative impression of the self. Tessa feels very stressed about school as well, and she decides to talk to her mom about her feelings. Her mother encourages her to reframe her thinking in a positive light, holding the impression that she should do her best on the assessments and that she is capable of succeeding. This new frame of thinking allows Tessa to use stress as motivation, and as soon as she begins studying, she feels relief, showing a short-term experience of stress. Short-term stress is characterized by the sympathetic adrenal medullary axis, which increases sympathetic nervous system activation by producing adrenaline and noradrenaline, which prepare her to work hard instead of plaguing her body with cortisol. In adulthood, emotional traits and tendencies both remain stable and show normative trends over time. Despite major life events and role changes, emotional tendencies and personality remain stable in their rank order compared to the overall population. Emotional intelligence has developed when one reaches adulthood due to the experiences, maturation, and socialization experienced by a person through the lifetime. Emotional intelligence refers to the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships empathetically and fairly. Emotional intelligence is highly influenced by the ability of emotional regulation, which consists of the strategies we use to control which emotions we have, when we have them, and how strongly we experience and express them. Now adults, David and Tessa have learned to use different coping and emotional regulation methods based on the emotional tendencies and perspectives that they have developed over the lifetime. David's avoidant attachment style and negative temperament have remained with him through his lifetime and manifest differently in a variety of contexts, but consistently being the foundation for his experiences and personality. His negative temperament transcended into a personality high on neuroticism and introversion and low on agreeableness and openness to experience. For this reason, David is often withdrawn, tense, agitated, critical, and less interested. Through his life, David has held the view that he should hide his emotions from others, and he does not engage in any proactive emotional regulation methods because he does not actively seek out fulfillment of his needs. These tendencies have resulted in the ineffective coping strategies of denial and suppression, which compromised his ability to regulate his emotions properly. Suppression refers to consciously trying to exclude a thought or feeling from consciousness, which is ineffective at dismissing a thought from consciousness and often encourages rumination, which is continuously thinking about something for a long time and focusing on the negative aspects of the situation instead of possible solutions. David has never found emotions to be adaptive since he rarely engages in proactive solutions to emotions, and he consistently denies his emotions instead of accepting, acknowledging, and being curious about the emotion. These tendencies all reflect poor emotional intelligence and account for the fact that David was not able to form lasting relationships or inhibit his outbursts. On the other hand, Tessa's secure attachment style and positive temperament have remained with her through her lifetime, manifesting differently in a variety of contexts but consistently being the foundation for her experiences and personality. Her positive temperament transcended into a personality high in extroversion, agreeableness, open to experience, and conscientiousness, and low on neuroticism. For this reason, Tessa is often sociable, emotionally stable, empathetic, imaginative, and goal-oriented. Through her life, Tessa has maintained a healthy balance between independence and interdependence, seeking out new opportunities and being curious about her feelings and the feelings of others, while also seeking out support from others when needed. When experiencing an intense emotion, Tessa is quick to accept it and to question why she is feeling that way, which increases her sense of control, helps her understand the emotion, and gives her more flexibility in regulating it. She has also learned to use situation modification to take control of a situation which she anticipates will be difficult or induce negative emotions. When she is not in control of the situation, she frequently uses cognitive change and reappraisal to change the way she thinks about the situation in order to change her emotions. These strategies have been learned throughout Tessa's lifetime through experiences as well as the influence of temperamental predispositions. These strategies demonstrate adequate emotional intelligence and allow her to problem solve and overcome difficulties without being plagued with negative emotion. In conclusion, emotional intelligence is both a trait and an ability that develops through maturation as a person learns about their emotions and expectations, but is guided by the genetic and temperamental predispositions that are stable through life. In reality, people do not commonly exist at opposite extremes of the emotion-intelligence spectrum as demonstrated with David and Tessa, but instead have complex combinations of emotion regulation strategies and personality traits. Also, a person like David is at no point doomed for the rest of his life in terms of overall affect and emotional intelligence, as learning more about your emotions or seeking out therapy can mend these weaknesses. With high emotional intelligence and proactive emotion regulation strategies, it is possible to control your own emotions and their consequences instead of allowing them to control you. In the face of life's vast difficulties and stressors, emotional intelligence allows you to remain in control of your life and foster good mental health and relationships.